Here we are at the Stanford Graduate School of Business on another sunny day just a few hours before our interview with Professor Jeffrey Pfeffer. As we are sensing the energy of the place, we are excited about the upcoming discussion with one of its prominent thinkers. Professor Pfeffer is the recipient of the 2016 Herbert Simon Award of Rajk College.
I'm Jeffrey Pfeffer. I'm a professor at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, and I've done research over the years in organizational behavior and a variety of different topics. I'm probably most well known for the elective I teach on power and politics and organizations, but I've done research on human resource management and leadership and how the thinking of your time as money affects your behavior, and most recently on the effects of organizational environments on human health and mortality and morbidity.
Although we do not have a definite answer to the question of what makes a great leader, we indeed see a concentration of power among the most influential leaders of today. The professor gave us useful insights into his topic and showed how it evolved in a period when populism is on the rise.
I think one of the big issues in leadership and in thinking about the role of a leader is that it is very, particularly in the US and particularly in the late 20th and early 21st century, it is very self-indulgent and it is very inward focused. So you're told you need to be true to yourself. I don't think you need to be true to yourself. The role of a leader is to get things done and to lead, obviously, other people. And if you're going to lead other people, you do not need to be true to yourself. You need to be true to what they need from you. So if you're having a bad day, if you're sad, if your significant other has walked out on you, the people that you're leading really don't care about that. At some level, what they care about is your ability to make them more successful and effective. And so you need to worry more about what other human beings need from you and less about what you want to do for yourself. So that's the issue of authenticity. You need to be authentic to the human beings who are relying on you. You don't need to be authentic to yourself. I think we underestimate the extent to which humans and human behavior is unchanged and unchanging over generations and across cultures, because I think human psychology is fundamentally, a response to evolution and evolutionary pressures. My friend Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, gave me once a book called Chimpanzee Politics. And the interesting thing about chimpanzee politics is they're very similar to human politics. Every natural living system that I know of, fish, chickens, baboons, humans, have hierarchies. If there's a hierarchy, you're better off being at the top than at the bottom. There are fewer positions at the top than at the bottom. There's naturally competition. So I don't think that this is likely to change anytime soon. I could, of course, be wrong. There are these two books which are kind of favorites of mine because I think they were completely wrong. So Moises Naim wrote this book, The End of Power, which Mark Zuckerberg recommended, which is ironic because Mark Zuckerberg, of course, runs a company in which he has supermajority voting rights for his shares. It was interesting, The End of Power. And then my friend Henry Timms was co-author on a book called New Power, and the theory behind both of these books was that given the evolution of communication modalities and the evolution of the internet and the evolution of all of these things, social media, that this was going to lead to a different world in which there was going to be, since everybody had access to all information, there was going to be democratization and decentralization of power. And of course, exactly the opposite is what has happened. And so to me, it is interesting that the rise of new communication modalities and the rise of the internet and the rise of social media has not ended power, but it's made the concentration of power greater, and it has permitted people who are willing to use these tools in interesting ways to accumulate power in a way that nobody could have anticipated. Donald Trump has permanently changed U.S. politics. Oh, yeah. I mean, so there are norms and conventions, and once someone breaks the norms and conventions and can get away with it, everybody says, well, I guess the norms and conventions aren't really so normative and conventional. Tons of research on narcissism and how narcissism positively predicts you're getting into leadership positions and you're getting promoted and you're staying in leadership positions.
For many of the aspiring young talents, going to an elite business school seems like the perfect career stepping stone. Why is it so, and what exactly is the problem, even at the top institutions? We try to tackle these questions with the professor, who has a long experience in working in this field.
I think the problem with leadership and leadership training and a lot of the leadership writing is that it's based more on how people want the world to be and how they want leaders to be rather than on how leadership actually works. But most leadership training, particularly inside companies, is about some aspirational view which bears almost no resemblance to the reality. So leadership, as it is taught, would never speak to the reality of a Donald Trump or, for that matter, a Viktor Orban. The problem with business schools is really that it's hard to get in, but it's even harder to get thrown out. So particularly for the elite business schools, Harvards, Stanfords, Northwesterns, etc., I think many students see this as a brand and as an opportunity to network, and they don't really see it as particularly an academic pursuit. And so therefore, I think the learning culture of many contemporary U.S. business schools is very problematic. And sooner or later, people will recognize that it is a branding and networking exercise rather than an academic place such as a medical school or an engineering school or a law school. I actually, with respect to business schools, I've said for a long time that I think business schools are more a reflection of society than a shaper of society. So, you know, if you say, my goodness, business schools have contributed to the rise of the primacy of shareholder value over stakeholder and been concerned with other stakeholders, I'm not sure that we have really influenced that very much, as that we are a reflection of the changes in the larger social values in society.
Long hours, high pressure, great responsibility, and ever-increasing expectations. This might be relatable for many of today's workers in all kinds of fields, industries, and positions. The professor warned us about the social consequences of such a mentality and also proposed solutions to these problems.
I think, you know, when people come to work, they have placed their psychological and physical well-being in the hands of their employer. And I think the employer does have an obligation, just as employers have and companies have obligations to worry about the physical environment and their use of, you know, carbon and their recycling and all their other impacts on the physical world. I think they have a similar responsibility to take care of the human assets and the human people who are working with them. I mean, you know, in the words of my friend Nuria Chinchilla and Yusei in Barcelona, why should we care more about polar bears than we do human beings? I mean, if they have a responsibility to recycle, and if they have a responsibility to worry about their using physical resources in a way that mitigates and minimizes environmental damage, they have the same level of responsibility to minimize the damage they do to their to the people who work for them. In general, the change has been a reduction in the number of employees it takes to produce a given amount of good or service. So, so the modern contemporary economy has been, of course, an economy and a situation of growing inequality, not just in the United States, where it's been enormous, but actually around the world because of these, you know, I mean, the people at the top are doing well, and the people who have the particular skills that are still needed are doing well. But for the average person, there's much more economic insecurity than there used to be. Certainly in the United States, there's many more layoffs than there were 40 or 50 years ago. There's much more insecurity in employment. Many people working now, higher percentage of people working as contract workers, as you know, part-timers, etc. So there's much more economic insecurity, which is quite stressful. I think another one is the level of job control that people have. We know that when people have high job demands but low discretion over how they meet those demands, that they experience that as stressful. I think we know that when people are unable to balance their work with their family obligations, that they experience that as stressful. So those are, I think, three things that need to be fixed. I think we also know that when people are underpaid, they have financial stress, which is also unhealthy. I mean, you know, when companies make people sick, it is a cost borne by all of society. So if we're going to solve the worldwide healthcare cost crisis, it has to start, or at least go through at some level, the workplace.
Lastly, we asked the professor what he would say if he had the opportunity to deliver a personal message to the world.
I think people overestimate their influence, and they, you know, seek to leave some lasting legacy and all these other wonderful terms I know. I mean, when you actually look at the legacies of most people, they are very ethereal, very ephemeral. They disappear quite quickly. So my theme song, or my theme, is from an old 1960s rock star who nobody could remember anymore, named Ricky Nelson, who has a famous song called Garden Party, which I highly recommend everybody look up. You can find it on YouTube, Garden Party, Ricky Nelson. And it has in there my favorite line, which goes, "You can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself."